part 2 of health advice for travellers. Like last week was part 1, and that involved health advice for travellers before you get on the aeroplane. This week it's part 2, it's health advice for travellers once you're on the aircraft. Now I assume you're a bit like me, a man of the street, you haven't got a lot of dough, you may be poor as a church mouse. As a result, you'll be travelling in the back of the plane, cattle class. So there are 2 problems that I want to cover. Number 1 is blood clots, and number 2 is the brace position that you may need if there's an accident. So let's cover blood clots. So say you're in cattle class, it's okay, but it's a bit cramped, you know, they've got to stuff a few more of you in. Because of that, you haven't got the best of circulation. Things tend to squash up and the blood isn't moving as well. So that means there's a higher risk of the blood clotting in your veins, and that can cause big time problems down the track. So there's a number of things that you can do to help stop this happening. So things to prevent a blood clot when you're flying is, firstly, is stretch out when you can, as much as possible, to keep those veins straight so the blood can whiz up. I know it's cramped, but there are positions you can get into, move around a bit. When you're doing that, squeeze up your calves a bit, and that squashing them will keep the blood flowing. Also, make sure that the blood's not thickening up, so stay well hydrated with hydrating fluids, you know, orange juice with water in it, lots of, you know, nice cup of tea and stuff like that. Stay away from too much alcohol because that tends to dehydrate you. And lastly, go for walks up and down the aisle, and that there will keep things moving for you, stretch you out a bit, and that keeps the blood flowing. And you may get up the end and poke your head into the first class and say, "Oi, has anyone got a bit of lobster left?" Now, from the medical point of view, there are 2 things you have to watch out for. Your doctor may prescribe you sleeping pills. My opinion is it's not a good idea to use sleeping pills while you're flying in the aircraft, because what can happen is you take them, and if you're stuck all but cramped up in cattle class, you end up squeezing everything together and you're a higher risk of blood clots. It's better to use the sleeping pills when you land, and I'll discuss that in part 3 next week. The other thing to think of is you may be predisposed to blood clots, like you've got a medical condition that thickens up your blood, or you may be really overweight and so things move slower anyway. So in that situation, if you're a bit worried about it, have a quick chat to your doctor, and he may get you or order you some stockings to keep your calf muscles cramped up nice and tight to keep the blood flowing, and even a blood thinner like aspirin or something like that. But doctors are very good at discussing that sort of stuff, so it's important you think about it and talk to your doc before you go. The second issue that I want to talk about while you're flying is the possibility of, God forbid, having a crash. Now, the things that will help you survive an air crash is, number 1, is listening to the hostess when the briefing is given. It's given for a reason. It's not just to mouth off. Look where the exits are. So if there's a crash, you know where they are. Equally, so is just learn from looking at the manual and even asking the hostie on what is the proper brace position. When the aircraft hits the ground hard, you have a much greater chance of surviving, because your head's locked between your legs and won't flail about, and then your feet are locked behind your knees, so at the impact the feet are pushed against the ground and don't kick up and get broken on the seat in front. So what I'm saying to you is, if you know the brace position properly, you're a lot safer. The other advantage, of course, of the brace position is that if the aircraft is irrecoverable, say it's in one of those nasty spins and everyone's screaming and yelling, at least if your head's down between your legs, you can kiss your ass goodbye. See?